we should be good. Uh, so I guess I should start with a presentation of the discipline, a discipline which I would say that is kind of at the center of your master's program. So I am also very interested in knowing what you are doing professionally right now and what your plans are, because I hope that you will be able to use directly what you learn with me. In any case, the focus will be the investments made at microeconomical level. So we are going to talk about small companies that do real investments in uh, tangible and intangible assets, such as maybe land, buildings, equipment, furniture, computers, software systems, and so on. So the main point would be, well, to be able to understand, to get to understand the needs of a business, or rather of the business operating cycle, to be able to establish the investment requirements, to build a budget, from this point on to be able to identify financing sources for the different articles from the budget, to plan the implementation of the investment, then to be able to do the financial forecasting. And in order to do that, to forecast the revenues, the charges, the cash inflows and outflows, we, especially for a startup, we will need to see how we can identify the market, analyze the market, create the marketing mix, and maybe most importantly, the most technical aspect of everything that we are going to do will be the financial feasibility analysis. Well, a feasibility analysis and probably a sensitivity and risk analysis for the investment. So I have no idea of your professional past, even of what you have studied for your bachelor's degree. So hopefully we will have a conversation today, and you will tell me if there are parts of what we are doing that you maybe encounter in the past, whether it was for your studies and or in your professional field. I'm also going to tell you what I do, how I use this knowledge in the business environment, and how you will be able to use it hopefully once you graduate. In any case, from the beginning, you should find a business idea, because you will see, in order to be able to develop your knowledge, we will try to apply everything by doing a project. And this project will take the form of a feasibility study. A feasibility study for an investment, but for an investment, and this is basically your choice, but my suggestion would be for this investment to be proposed for a startup. You can even identify an existing company and start from its current status, and imagine an investment that would lead to some development of its activity. So you can do that. But in my opinion, the best way to approach the project would be to imagine simply a startup. So just imagine a company that does not exist. You start from scratch. You start basically from a business idea and you develop it, obviously on paper. So it could be either of them. My suggestion is to go with the startup, because if you choose to imagine a development for an existing company, on one hand, obviously, you have to find it. Then you have to obtain the required information to know it well. And maybe more time consuming will be here the financial forecast, because as you will see later on, you will need to do the forecasting for an existing company, on one hand, in the current scenario where there's no investment, then you will come back and redo the forecast with the investment. And in a maybe, let's say, first scenario, you will need to try to isolate the effects of the investment in an incremental way. So it's a bit more complex from this point of view, which is why I suggest you simply imagine a startup. But again, it will be your choice. My objective for today would be to give you several examples to inspire you in choosing your business idea. But as the time is kind of short, I will need you to choose a business idea until the following week. It would be great if, in any case, this idea would be related to what you are doing, because in any case, you will need information, and of course, it would be simpler if you're already working that field, and in this way, you know what you are doing, and what the business would be doing. If this is of interest to you, and again, I hope that it is, because this is at the core of your master's program. So hopefully this is why you have chosen this field, because this is what you are interested in. So if this interests you, in my opinion, by the end of the semester, you would be able to elaborate a feasibility study yourself, at least the economic part, because an investment that also involves buildings or construction works rather, for sure, for such an investment, doing the feasibility study would require the involvement of architects, engineers, and other technical staff. But in any case, the financial side of it, you will be able to do it yourself at a, I would say, high level. And I had in the past many students that graduated and immediately started working in this field with great success. So as you can see, this is why I am very interested in knowing what you are doing at the current time, to find ways in which you will be able to use this information, this knowledge. Me, I've been working in the business environment, well, in this field for, I guess, more than 20 years, did probably more than 200 feasibility studies for different companies, public institutions, mostly from the western region of Romania. But I also worked for different agencies that offer, generally speaking, subsidies, European or national subsidies for investments. In this position, mostly evaluating feasibility studies, projects, investment projects forwarded by different entities, mostly companies. I can also say that our university is, I would say, greatly involved in the business environment and has been so for the last at least 10 years. And we had different programs through which we financed mostly startups. I would say that in the last 10 years, we have financed with the university, the West University of Timișoara. We probably financed more than 300 startups with funds of maybe 25 to 50 or 60, maybe even more, thousand euros, I mean, per startup, which in my opinion is, generally speaking, a lot for a startup. Nevertheless, because for us the point is to learn how to configure the investments and how to analyze them, I will need you to imagine an idea that involves greater investments. So 50,000 euros will not be enough. Hopefully we can come up with budgets that exceed 200,000 euros. We will talk about that some more. Next week we are going to talk about budgets in any case. But just as a ruling line, try to imagine from now an idea that would involve a consistent investment. I mean, I'm sure that you can imagine business ideas that don't need great investments, but that's not for us. The point here is not really to start the activity, the business tomorrow, but rather to learn how to configure it. And for that, we need ideas that involve greater investments. My English for sure is a little rusty. Hopefully you understand me. Up until now, maybe you could give me some feedback. Maybe you could tell me what are the fields of work that you activate in at this point, and whether you have any contact with such problems. Give me some feedback.
Yeah, I can start. So I'm at work now. Excuse my background. It's the max that
Me
I
too,
could do.
obviously.
Yeah, so nice to meet you. Your English is fine, by the way. And at this time of the day, all the English kind of wraps up for all of us. um, I currently work as a line manager at Magna Electronics. Magna Electronics is an automotive company. I'm a line manager for the tools department. So most of my career, I have been working in software developer as a developer, and then as a manager, being that tech leader, team leader, and now currently group leader. I initially graduated in accounting at FEA, but then I proceeded in a different direction and I graduated in web technologies in Italy. Actually, I lived there for a bit. My family lives there, so I moved there for a couple of years, and then I moved again back here. And 5 years now, I've been pursuing this career path in management, and that's actually the reason I've decided to join this master program. Um, Not a lot of us are prepared or imagine ourselves as leaders. The opportunity presents itself, as I've said, tech leader, team leader, mentor, and then things escalate. And now I'm a line manager who handles more than that, not just mentoring. Mostly I work with budgets and forecasts, but not of such magnitude that you've mentioned. So I think it's going to be really awesome working on that. It's going to expand a little bit because now I'm covering pieces of a greater thing. Magna Electronics is like a huge corporate, so it's obviously all of us has like our own piece that handles and covers the entire ecosystem of it. um, I joined because I always felt like I'm missing the theoretical part. I learned a lot by doing, learned a lot by struggling with some situations. I needed a little bit more than that because, as I've said, I sometimes have only like a small window of visibility. So I kind of wanted more than that, also for myself, but also for the benefits of the company in the end. I'm actually happy with this master's degree until now. It helped me develop vision and strategic thinking and a lot of global aspects that I felt like I'm kind of missing until now, to say it like that. So yeah, this kind of summarizes. If you have questions for me
I
or
have
stuff that I
questions.
can detail,
You
yeah,
didn't mention your location. Where are you located right now?
in Timișoara as we speak.
So you are in Timișoara.
Yes.
Did you choose this master's program in English because of the English or because the classes are held online? I mean, do you use English maybe at your workplace?
Yeah, I use English nonstop. We are a multinational, so
So you probably
inevitably,
also need to practice your terminology in English.
yes,
Mhm.
also. So, but we work a lot with people abroad. So this kind of comes with the job.
Okay.
I did not choose the master's degree for the English, but more for the schedule. Actually, my bachelor degree mentor suggested that this would be more appropriate for me for the schedule, for my schedule, and for the master's degree schedule. It would be something that I could handle because I don't always work 40 hours a week, to say it like that.
Okay, I get it.
So that's why, yeah.
I also want to ask you how big your team is. You are a team leader, but how many people do you have to lead? And you talked about budgets. Usually you prepare the budgets yourself, and for what? Just at the level of your team? You prepare budgets of what type? Investment budgets, like for instance, at the beginning of the year, you analyze what your requirements, your needs will be throughout the year, and you prepare investments, or you are preparing the operational budgets with revenues and charges at the level of your team. Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So currently I have 19 people in my team, in my group, actually, because it's a group of multiple teams. At the forecast level, so I'm mostly covering human resources allocations. This is like my main responsibility as a group leader. In terms of budgets and budget allocation, we go through a forecast planning at the beginning of the year and monthly, and for different financial periods. I am talking here about human resources allocations and also
So this means that
hardware
when we are doing
licenses.
forecastings, you are mainly forecasting the wage charges. Is this what you mean?
Yes, but
Wages.
aside that, I also have like requests per project. So some stakeholder comes to us with a need, and then we discuss budget in terms of people allocation, hardware needs, and what else. And then I work with the
And
wages,
in
hourly
in
wages that we
such a
have.
case, this would also involve, I would imagine, investments like the equipment. You might
Yes,
need to buy
equipment
to
and
purchase equipment.
licenses. Yeah, and
Mhm.
licenses
So
sometimes. Yeah.
basically, for each project, some investments could be involved,
Of course, yeah.
but their value is not that great. You don't get to values of over 200,000, as I said.
Well, it depends. Now we are working on a budget plan that extends for a period of 3 years, and we have so licenses, hardware equipment, initial investment, and then people allocation. We kind of go a lot over 2 millions here.
I
Yeah.
imagine that when you have to propose a price offer, you probably do such a planning. You also calculate the costs. You probably calculate also a return on investment or some or an internal rate of return. Is this something that you do yourself?
Yes.
Okay, so that will be close enough to what we are going to do. If you want to, uh, you can develop in the project for discipline, you can develop a case study that might come from your line of work if you want to. In my opinion, it would still be better to imagine a startup, but again, if you want to, you can also do a project on your own work.
Yeah,
I
I will
don't
think
suggest it,
about
but you
it.
can do it.
Yeah, it's gonna be also interesting to think of an idea. I actually liked what you've said previously. It's gonna be nice thinking for us to do. I think all of us kind of dream of a startup, but never just put our mind into it. So it's going to be a nice exercise for us. Probably I'm going to go towards software development because it's what I've been doing like a decade now. But we'll see. I think I would like to think about it. Probably it's going to be something similar, not the same, but yeah, I would like to experience this, to say it like that.
It would be okay. Just see to the value of the investments, because at least from my experience, usually the companies that develop software don't need that many investments. They usually have a hard time reaching values of 200,000 because maybe you would start a business with 3-4 employees. We'll talk about that as well. And if you only need computers, some software which will not be very high priced, would be hard to get to 200-300,000 euros. So have that in mind as well when you choose the field.
So think big, basically.
Yes, but yes, who knows? Maybe again, from my context, I see many software companies that indeed at the beginning they start with 2 or 3 employees developing software for other companies, but at some point they start dreaming about having their own products, not just wait for orders from other companies. So who knows, maybe you could imagine developing a platform from the beginning, and that platform could be part of your investment. It's just an idea. I'm sure you will come up with other ideas as well. When did you graduate for your bachelor's degree in accounting? In what year?
2009.
2009, then we might have met at least for the classes of financial analysis, because I was teaching at the accounting specialty in 2009. Was your program of 3 years or of 4 years? I think it was the
3.
first that took 3 years.
Yeah.
So in the third year, then the last semester, you must have studied financial analysis, which might have been with me, should have been with me.
It has been a very long time since then.
Yes, it's more than 10 years. It's true.
We had
about 10 years.
the first 1 year and a half. We had everybody was together, and then we chose
Of course.
our specialization, and I went for accounting at that point.
In any case, I'm sure that the knowledge that you have from accounting and from what you do will be of great help. And it's only normal that it will be so. It's only normal to choose a master's program based that requires your initial knowledge. Your knowledge in the accounting field will be helpful, because we will need, as I said, to forecast revenues, to forecast charges, to build budgets. Even if we will not necessarily forecast balance sheets and profit and loss accounts, normally we could, but it's not necessary, it's not mandatory. Cash flow statements. So these are all statements that you have built for sure during your bachelor's degree studies. Then I'm sure that you have studied probably in the second year, you must have studied financial management, and there you probably talked about investments. You probably used ratios, indicators such as the net present value, internal rate of return, and others. And that will be useful as well.
Well, we've also been discussing about these topics this year, the first semester. Actually, we had a lot of courses for financial statements, for example, and also ratio analysis, trend analysis. So it was a nice refresher for all of us. It's fresh in mind. Yeah.
Of course. And Mr. Fironda, is it Fironda?
Yes, it is Fironda, Marcel.
Would you also tell me a bit about yourself from the same points of view?
Yes, I studied political science at the UVT. Currently, I'm living in Vienna. I'm working here as a social supervisor, if it's to translate it exactly. That means a job that it's non-qualified social worker. I don't have a management position. I work in a team with, we are 15 people with the team leader. I'm also studying currently in the bachelor studies social work, and it sounds very interesting for me, this course, because I do have a small company in Romania, in Timișoara, dating 2008. I'm not doing actually anything with it. I don't have a commercial activity at the moment, but I do have some fixed assets. That's why it's still active. And I'm thinking maybe to to develop something, with this company. And yeah, let's see what
Okay.
will come up.
Right, I understand. So for you, the background is significantly different. As far as I understand, obviously you don't have a background in accounting. We will have to work a bit more, but I'm not scared for that. I'm sure we will do just fine. As for the company that you already have in Timișoara, I might be able to maybe help you by pointing out different financing programs through which you could be able to obtain subsidies to maybe do some additional investments and restart your activity. So I'm sure that we can have some discussions about how you could reoperate your company.
Yeah,
What was the field in which the company worked in the beginning?
Yeah, the main activity is other scientific and professional activities.
Okay, so that in terms of classifications, but what was
Yeah.
it exactly that you did, if you ever did anything?
Yeah, I did something, but on a very low level. Managing. I was basically an music management manager, So I've managed some projects in the music business area.
Okay. Well, with this, I think we can start. As far as I can see, your other colleagues are not attending. Maybe I should start by showing you the program and at the same time the structure of your project. So I'm gonna project my screen. Just give me 1 second. Okay. So you should be able to see my screen right about now. Hopefully you do. So this is the platform. Obviously, you will be able to find here the structure of the feasibility studies, of the structure of your project. I'm gonna open it and I will show you what we will need to do. Obviously, you can download it yourself, but I just want to point out the main parts of it, and with that, the main topics for discussion. At the center of this feasibility study would, as I said, would be an investment. So you will be imagining an investment promoted by a startup. The point is, in the end, to decide whether to do the investment or not. In order to make such a decision, you have to obviously try to forecast the results of operating the investment and to decide whether these results would be enough, of course, in order to convince you to do it. Doing an investment will require us to take existing capital and use it to form, as I said before, fixed assets such as land, buildings, equipment, and so on. So basically the capital would be stuck in those assets for a long time, or maybe who knows, forever, with us having, I would imagine, the objectives on one hand to recover that capital at some point as quick as possible, in fact, and apart from that, of course, to gain something, to have a certain return. I'm sure that you can compare such an investment to any other. If someone really has, let's say, 100,000 euros, I'm sure that he or she, they would have simply the possibility of just keeping the money, not doing anything, or at least creating a bank deposit. And if we were to create a bank deposit today of 100,000 euros, I would imagine that we would expect at least two things, as I said before, to be able at some point to regain our capital. Let's say that our deposit is for 1 year. We would expect to be able to regain those 100,000 euros at the end of the year from the bank. And aside from that, to get an interest of, let's say, 7%, 7,000 in this case. So these would be the two, I would say, main objectives. In the same manner, if we were to invest, or if a company, let's put it like this, if a company were in the position to invest 100,000 euros in, let's say, equipment, just as an example, it should have the main objectives to recover at some point, to regain at some point the capital under the form of cash, and to gain some additional revenue, some return on the investment. But if you have at least these two alternatives, you have to compare them. And while for the bank deposit, accomplishing the objectives would be, I would dare to say, almost certain. I mean, you should be almost certain that you will be able to regain the capital and the 7,000 return if that is stipulated in your contract with the bank. For the investment, the real investment, I'm sure that the probability of not attaining your objectives will be a lot higher. So the risks involved, the risks related to both of these objectives would be a lot higher. Coming back to what we have to do. Under these circumstances, we need to forecast the results of operating the investment. So on one hand, we have to configure the investment. I'm coming back to our feasibility study. We will have to configure our investment. So to know what to invest in, it's this part of the feasibility study. Then we have to evaluate the investment components and to be able to get to a budget. The budget, which in the end will look like a simple table, will tell us how much capital we need to invest. Let's say it will be 250,000 euros. Now, as I was saying, we will need to compare this investment, the value of the investment, or rather the value of the capital to be invested. We need to compare it with the forecasted results. What kind of results? And here again, it depends. Because if we would be talking about an investment promoted by, let's say, a public entity, an NGO, let's take the example of a public hospital. Me, in the past, I have worked with many public hospitals. So let's take the example of maybe the county hospital of Timișoara, of the department of Timiș. I'm sure that each year they do investments, new buildings, new medical equipment, and so on. Let's say that we would be talking about an investment of 1 million euros now, at this point. It would probably need the involvement of the county council, as the county council, we are talking about the Timiș County. The county council is responsible for the infrastructure of the Timișoara county hospital. So basically, everything that is being done in terms of investments in building and equipment goes through them. Either the funds come from them, either from maybe the public health ministry, either from different other sources. The county council should have a saying in it. And before doing anything, for sure, the county council will need to approve the investment. For them to be able to approve the investment, you have to present to them a feasibility study. So exactly what we are doing. That means that for sure, each year, the hospital prepares several feasibility studies that are being presented in front of the management of the hospital, but later on in front of the city council, the county council, I'm sorry, and they have to make a decision. But how do they make the decision? Maybe, as I said, they need to invest 1 million euros. The question is, after implementing the investment, after starting the operation of the investment, what is it that we gain? And that what we are going to gain, hopefully, will it justify the investment of 1 million euros? In the case of the hospital, things could be even more complicated than for a company because the gains, the targeted results, will probably not be monetary. They may present themselves maybe under the form of lives that would be saved. I'm sure that you can imagine many types of investments in a public hospital that would lead to saving lives. So let's say that they forecast them saving whatever it may be, 2, 3 additional lives each year for a period of, let's say, 10 years. So they present it to the county council. On one hand, they need 1 million euros to invest in maybe a new equipment, but that would lead to saving 2 lives a year for 10 years, 20 lives. Are those 20 lives that would be saved justifying the investment of 1 million euros? So that's obviously a decision. It's a logical decision. You have someone has to make it. Just to go on just a bit more with this idea, although this will not be at the center of what we are going to do, you might say, well, even if you save 1 life, it's worth it. But how much would you pay to save 1 life? 1 million euros, 2, 10, 100 million euros. The reality is that in the world that we live in, people don't really pay 100 million euros to save 1 life. No matter how harsh it may be, this is usually the reality. And usually you can and you would be able to estimate a price that the society might pay to save on average a human life. Unfortunately, we don't want to see it like this. But on the other hand, in many cases, we have to. Because if in my example, the city council should make this decision, I'm sure that they also have a limited budget. And maybe from their budget, they would have the possibility of, as I said, paying $1 million to, there you go, save 20 lives. But at the same time, they could be investing in the cultural program. Timișoara, as you know, was one of the European capitals of culture in 2023, and the cultural programs still go on in 2024, and they will go on, in fact, in the future. And with the county council investing capital in the cultural programs, for sure that will have great impact in terms of tourism and in the end in value added for the city and for the entire region. So they could use the capital for that as well. At the same time, the police could propose an investment which, in their opinion, would be able to lead to saving, who knows, other 10 lives by avoiding crimes. I'm just giving you some examples. At the same time, I'm sure that they could find places to invest in the transport infrastructure. And by building new roads or just modernizing the existent infrastructure, they could even argue that maybe they would avoid some accidents, thus saving lives. So my point is that in such cases of public investments, the results of operating the investments are usually not of financial nature, which complicates things. The results might translate into, as I said, lives being saved, or rather prolonged, or maybe increasing the quality of life, or maybe, as I said, accidents avoided, the avoidance of loss of public or private property, and so on. So in such cases, you get to comparing, on one hand, the investment budget, which will be expressed in money, with results that are not of financial nature. This makes things even more difficult. But I want to point out that this is not the type of results that we will be targeting. If we were to do so, we would have, in addition to what we are doing, we would also have to find a way to transform those non-financial results into financial results, to be able to compare them to the value of the investment, to be able, in the end, to make a decision. So just saying, this is not what we are doing. Maybe if you will allow me, I will give you an even more specific example. I guess about the time that we are talking about 2012, 2014, I remember that I have worked at an investment project with a local hospital, and they were planning to do an investment in the field of what would be the expression? I guess genital cancers. Genital cancers for women. At that time, I don't know the statistics today, but I imagine that not a lot has changed since. But at that time, Romania was on either first place or, in any case, on top of the list for countries of the European Union where women were dying because of genital cancers for different reasons, but one reason was related to women not going to the doctor on time, or rather on a regular basis, for routine checks, because the cancers, usually such cancers evolve slowly in years, and if they would be discovered in the first stages, the probability of healing with minimum effects would be higher. But usually they are being discovered in the later stages when they already have symptoms. And in those stages, usually the only solution is total hysterectomy. So basically surgical removal of more or less the entire reproductive apparatus of the patient, which leaves horrible effects, consequences on the patient, physical ones as well as psychological ones. So at that time, the investment was targeted into the diagnose part, and they were hoping to increase the number of cases that would be diagnosed in earlier stages, and thus they would have been able to prevent, at least in part, the physical and psychological effects that I was talking about. In such a case where the investment was of about 2 million euros, it was required to estimate the number of lives that we would be able to save and change, and to somehow make that comparable to the capital to be invested. Again, as unfortunately, even though human life is precious, unfortunately, you need to invest capital that is limited and that might have other possible alternatives of investment. So I just wanted to point out that there is such a type of analysis as well, but this will not be what we will be talking about. We are going to talk about investments proposed by companies, by businesses. And for such investments, the outcome, the desired outcomes will be of financial natures. This means that we will be in the position of forecasting, as I was saying before, the revenues generated by operating the investment, the charges involved by the same operating cycle, get to a budget. From the budget, we will need to get to a cash flow statement, because it will be the net operating cash flow that we are going to use as a basis to evaluate the feasibility of the investment from the financial point of view. So therefore, you will find here in the structure of your feasibility study this part of financial planning, which contains, as I was saying, the planning of the revenues, charges, building of the operating budget, building of the cash flow statement. The main point here will be to get to the yearly net operating cash flow. Once we have that, basically we will compare the value of the investment, or rather the value of the capital that we would need to invest, to the yearly values of the net operating cash flows. And in this analysis, we will calculate, build several indicators that, at least from the financial management disciplines or accounting disciplines, you might know. You see them there. The net present value and the internal rate of return are the most important ones, I would say. In principle, the point would be to see whether the outcomes, the forecasted outcomes of the investment are high enough to allow us to recover our capital and to gain enough of return. Let's say that the indicators show us just that the return seems to be enough for us to make the investment. Let's say that we require, in our mind at least, 15 or 20% internal rate of return to convince us to do the investment. And after doing the forecasting and the analysis, it seems that it is so. But we will not be able to stop here, because at that point we will understand that on one hand, in our equation, the investment is more or less certain, never certain, but its value will be certain in a great deal. On the other hand, the other part of the equation, the net operating cash flows from the future, are everything but certain. Because, as you will see, they will be depending on probably hundreds of factors that we will not be able to control 100%. It might be related to the prices at which we buy the raw materials, prices for energy, water, different services, specific consumptions of different resources, wages, contributions, contribution rates, taxes, and so on. The list can go on. We can get to hundreds of factors that our forecasting depends on, but factors that we cannot control, at least not 100%. So realizing that, we have to understand that if those factors change their values in reference to whatever we estimate, that will lead to changes in the values of our indicators as the internal rate of return. Indicators that we use to decide whether to do the investment or not. So what that means is that, yes, maybe the investment promises us 20% return, but because of all those risk factors, that return is for sure not certain. It is being subjected to many risks. So therefore, we need to complete our analysis with a risk analysis to have the complete picture, to in the end decide whether to do the investment or not. You will end the feasibility study with this risk analysis, not before passing through a sensitivity analysis, which will have the purpose of, let's say, helping us identify the most important risk factors. You will see it at that time. Well, in a bit more than a month. So this is on principle the structure of a feasibility study. Normally, a feasibility study does not contain this part of market planning. You usually find this or do this in a business plan. But if we would be talking about an existing company, then maybe the market planning would be of less importance. Maybe. It's debatable. We will debate that in 2 weeks. But for a startup, I will try to argue in our following meetings that the market planning is probably more important than anything else, which is why I introduced that part also in our feasibility study. It would be hard or impossible to found the foundation for our financial planning without a prior market planning. Taking all that into consideration, basically this will also be our this will also be our main subjects of debate, because we will work specifically on these subjects. So you would be able at the end to prepare the feasibility study and to present it. You will have, I guess, about 3 deadlines throughout the semester, and we will establish them together. But I would like very much for you to work at your projects during the semester, upload on the platform the different parts of the feasibility study, have a more or less finished form at the end of the semester, and just present it at the exam. That will mean that I will evaluate on one hand your work during the semester, and that will represent 30% of your final grade. At the exam, I will ask you some theoretical questions concerning the analysis, the feasibility analysis. You will see that will represent another 30% of your grade, and the rest of the last 40% will be represented by the form and the presentation of your final feasibility study. So this is at least how I see us organizing our activity. I posted these subjects and I planned them on dates here on the platform. You can find them. And also here, I posted today a guide. It's a guide, and you can also take it as an example. It's a practical guide for doing feasibility analysis. I prepared it for practical purposes not so long ago in a collaboration with the University of Medicine and Pharmacy. We worked together on a project, and we prepared such a guide focused, it's true, on investments in the field of medicine, health services, but you will see that I followed there basically the same structure, and you will be able to apply everything from there at your project, because this is the approach more or less in any field. This is the approach that I use in practice in any field of work. And I have worked with investments in, you name it, public health, but software production, furniture production, restaurants, whatever. And basically in any field, you should be able to use the same logics to evaluate the feasibility of the investment. So this just to give you an idea of what we will be doing. I'm going to stop for a moment just to see if you are with me, if there are any questions so far.
I have a first question, if I may.
Of course, go ahead.
So you've mentioned at some point that until next week, we should add our business idea. Is there some place in the platform that we are going to do that, or just communicate via email?
Yes, no. We will create a section ourselves, and maybe this would be a good time. So we are here today. We will be talking today about the business environment, because you have to plant your ideas in the business environment. I was planning to show you some statistics about the business environment nationally, as well as maybe more focused. We will be focusing more on the Western region. I was planning to show you some statistics concerning entrepreneurship, and in particular to show you some examples of small businesses. So this is where I think I should also create the section for you uploading your business idea. Let's see. And we can set as a deadline next week, just at the beginning of our class, which will be at your request 1800. So the date will be the 19th. This should be it. I will write you here some details later on. I don't want to use more time right now, but the idea would be for you to download the structure of the feasibility study, so this Word document, and start working directly into it, describing your business idea, and most importantly, planning your operating cycle. I will show you how today later on. So this section 2.1 would be the most important section. Maybe it could even be the only section to fill in until the following week. Okay, so this would be your first assignment. From my point of view, it's important to choose the business idea now from the beginning. I don't need it to be the best idea in the world. People always take a lot of time in studies as well as in real life trying to find the perfect idea. But in my opinion, the perfect idea doesn't exist. many ideas could be excellent, and apart from that, the point is not necessarily for you to implement, to do this business for reals. It's more important for you to have an idea, to be able to work on it with me throughout the semester. So that's why it's very important for you to choose it quick, if it's not the best one, and not to reconsider later. Please don't come back in a week or two to say that you have a better idea you want to change. It's not important that the idea would be the best in the world. Okay. Having said that, I would like to pass and to show you some statistics just to, I guess, create some common ground, common foundations, and well, also to create the basis for you to plant your business idea. And I think I would like to start with some statistics concerning the entrepreneurs. Let's see. I have some material prepared here. I hope you can see it like this because I can't extend it on the screen. So these are the development regions from Romania. I would imagine that you know them. We have these 8 development regions, with the western region containing 4 counties: Timiș, Arad, Karaș-Severin, and Hunedoara. The population of Romania, you probably have an idea of its dynamics. I think it reached a peak in 1990, 1992 of a bit over 23 million. And from that point on, it has been decreasing. Now in 2021, actually, we were counted at exactly 19 million. So probably now in 2024, by now we probably are under 19 million, unfortunately. So this is the dynamics of the population. About almost 10% of this population is resident of the western region, of the 4 counties that are part of the western region of Romania. Here I have the number of the Romanian enterprises, and I'm going to show you more recent data. You can see here the dynamics of the number of enterprises, not commercial companies only, enterprises in general. By that I mean commercial companies, but I also mean authorized physical persons, family enterprises, individual enterprises, right? And that's about it, without associations or foundations, so NGOs, but enterprises. Now the number of enterprises has increased, and we probably are at the point of reaching 2 million, almost 2 million. I will show you more recent data. These are the main types of enterprises. For sure, most of them, as you can see, about 60% are commercial companies, and on the second place, authorized physical persons. there are important differences because, well, for many reasons, but one important reason is related to the accounting system. And from your accounting studies, such as they are, you probably know that a commercial company has a way of registering every accounting operation in mirror, like in a mirror system, double and type of registering the operations. And as financial statements, such companies elaborate balance sheets, profit and loss accounts, cash flow statements, whereas authorized physical persons have much simpler systems of accounting. Therefore, the way we would forecast the revenues and the charges would differ. And of course, there is also a matter of taxes, which are significantly different, I would say, between the authorized physical persons and the commercial companies. I would imagine that you will choose a commercial company as a form, and amongst the commercial companies, as you probably expect, statistically speaking, most of them are limited liability companies. In terms of size, I will also leave some place for you to guess, but for sure I can say from the beginning that most of the existing companies are very small. We will talk about how small because this will be very important for you in choosing the size of your own startup. Here I have some statistics concerning the distribution of the commercial companies by region, and the distribution is more or less, logically speaking, parallel to the distribution of the population. So about 10% of the population of the country lives in the western region, a bit less, more close to 9% of the number of the commercial companies are in the western region. So the ratio between the number of the companies and the number and the volume of the population is a bit lower than the average, than the national average here in the western region, although the western region is amongst the more developed regions of Romania. In fact, as the region contains the four counties, Timiș, Arad, Caraș-Târgu Muntenia, there are significant differences between those four counties, with Timiș being the most developed one, and as such, the number of companies in Timiș is a lot higher than the number of companies in the other counties. Arad is on the second place, also well developed, but Caraș-Severin and Hunedoara are less developed from the economical point of view, and for sure with lower numbers of companies. So let's say with a greater potential, which is also why lately more funds are being pumped in Caraș-Severin and Hunedoara, so they would be helped in the reaching, at least trying to reach, the level of development from Arad and Timiș. This is the evolution of the ratio companies to 1,000 inhabitants, which for sure is lower than the European Union's average. Again, this shows potential for growth, but at the same time, it should pose questions. Why the number of companies is significantly lower in Romania than in other countries? Now that we think about starting a company out for ourselves, what are the reasons for which other, well, wannabe entrepreneurs in any case, avoid or in any case hesitate starting their own businesses? you were saying at some point that yes, we are dreaming about starting new companies, and I can tell you that I do such studies each year, and I do them for research purposes, but not only for theoretical research purposes, but in many cases for very practical purposes. Practical in the sense that I'm often involved in all sort of programs that have as objective as well as objective, yes, to stimulate the creation of new companies. I was telling you about the fact that the university financed in the last 10 years probably more than 300 startups. So whenever we configure such a program, of course, we need to understand well the needs of the target public. So in such cases, of course, that we conduct studies, but I have other types of opportunities. In Timișoara, you might know Incubox, especially Mrs. Popescu, if you work in the field of software development, you probably do know Incubox, which was created kind of as an incubator for businesses, for startups in the field of software development. I was part of the team that developed the project. Of course, the beneficiary there was the city council and what's the word in English? The city hall of Timișoara. As during the last probably 20 years, Timișoara, in any case, the city hall, they developed their strategy by targeting in particular two fields, two economic fields, the IT&C field and the automotive field. And for that, among other projects, they wanted to develop an incubator in the IT&C field. This is the role of the Incubox infrastructure. They had one before that. They had a business incubator, UBIT, together with the Polytechnical University, but it was a bit smaller. So it was, for practical purposes, replaced by Incubox, with us preparing the feasibility study for Incubox in, I believe, 2011. So at that time, of course, we asked ourselves, okay, we want to create an infrastructure through which we would offer support to startups in the field of IT&C. But in the end, what are the needs of a startup in this field? What are the needs of an entrepreneur in this field? What are the barriers that he or the company encounter in their way to development? So we did, in such cases, studies on students in the field of IT&C, graduates, already entrepreneurs, employees, already companies that were already more developed, so that we would be able to see the different obstacles that the companies would encounter, and to understand the means for which we could be able to support them. Because as you can imagine, a lot of startups have a lot of difficulties in their early stages. So my point is that on many practical occasions, I did researches in this field of the entrepreneurial initiative at the regional level. For instance, here I have a very small study. It's, as you can see, I hope you can see, on only 104 group of people, I mean, respondents. It is one of the many studies that we did to configure our own programs for supporting, for helping small businesses. And here the question was related to the reasons for which they, the respondents, were dreaming of starting a business. Whenever we do such studies, you see that really more than 90% of the people dream throughout their lifetime of starting a business. And these statistics basically are the same almost all over the world. So most of us do dream of starting a business. The reasons for starting a business might be slightly different, might vary at least at first glance, but in the end, at the center of everything is the desire of gaining more. People might say it differently. Some say that they simply want to gain more money. Others say it in a more nuanced manner. They say that they want to have the opportunity of gaining more. They have a job, but no matter how much they work, how much additional work they put in at their current job, there is a limit above which they cannot gain more. So they want to create for themselves this opportunity to gain more. Others dream about having more spare time. Others understand that they probably will not have more spare time in their own business, but at least hope to have more flexibility in scheduling their own program. Others are tired of answering to a boss. Others dream of being bosses themselves. But again, in any case, at the center of everything will be the desire to gain more. So a financial objective. And if we are realistic about it, it will be impossible for the company to survive if it will not prove capable of generating financial gains. Because if it doesn't generate money, it will probably consume money. And on a longer term, it will probably be impossible to sustain a company in which you always have to bring money out of your own pocket. We can debate a lot on this subject because I think it is very important. But for the time being, I just want to point out that for sure, at the center of everything is the objective of gaining, financially speaking. The main reason maybe for starting a business. Now, for the origin of the business ideas, and this is also, in my opinion, very important because each year I have probably hundreds of people that really plan of starting new businesses, and the foundations for their ideas could be very different. And in accordance to the origins of the business idea, the outcome is also usually very different. What is it that I mean to say by that? In my opinion, the healthiest way of seeing things would be to start a business in a field that you already gained experience. Let's say that you have worked in the field of software development for 10 years. But you say, I'm tired of this. I want to start a business, but I don't want to do this anymore. I'm looking at my neighbor and I see that he works in constructions. To me, it seems like he has maybe 4, 5, 6 employees, construction workers, and everything he does is just supply them with materials. Well, tell them what to do, but they basically do it themselves, and he doesn't need to do anything. That's my opinion, at least, the way I see things from my side of the fence. But to decide to start an economic activity not in the field that I know, the field of software development, but in the field that I don't know, is extremely risky, to say the least, because in the end I will be put in the position of doing something that basically I have no idea how to do. So my point is that the chances for such a business to succeed are usually minimum when you don't know what you are doing, when you don't have any work experience in that field. Now, there are other possibilities. Some people start their businesses from maybe their field of studies. You have studied accounting, you never worked in this field, but at least you have studied in this field. So you have a good idea about what it involves. And you plan of starting a company offering accounting services to other companies. It would probably be more helpful if you would have had experience in the field, but at least the fact that you have studies in this field for sure will help you a lot. You will employ people that do have experience and maybe you will manage. Others start businesses based on whatever they do in their spare time. Me, for instance, I like to run and take part into running competitions. I've never worked in this field, but I've taken part in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years in many competitions. I've seen how the organizer do their job, and I even organized a running competition for our faculty in 2017 for its 50th anniversary. So let's say that I have some knowledge from this point of view, and I might consider at some point in the future of starting a business. Maybe I would buy equipment for the timing, some vehicle to be able to move throughout the region or throughout the entire country. And I would start offering services to the organizers, or I would organize competitions myself directly. So there are different ways of choosing the idea. Usually when I have people in front of me that plan of starting businesses, unfortunately, I find it unfortunate. Many of them ask me, what are the best economic fields for starting a business? What works? And I always tell them that nothing works by itself. A business, in particular at the beginning, will not work by itself. It might work if you make it work. But if you don't do anything, nothing will happen, especially at the beginning. So it makes no sense to me in real life to choose a business maybe that will work. I think I will pick that or that or that. I don't see any reason in such an approach. Sometimes when I tell that to people, as I was telling you before, we sometimes have financing programs. We offer financing to possible entrepreneurs. And when I tell them that, sometimes they say, and I remember a few years ago when I was doing a presentation in the northern part of of Romania, in Iași maybe, I remember that some of the attendees asked me, well, why limit us? Why not let us start a business in whatever field we choose? I try to explain to them that the chances are very low of them succeeding if they have no experience, they don't know the field, they don't know what they are doing. And hopefully we'll understand that. If it's not clear by now, you will understand that in the following weeks when you will develop the operating cycle, you will need to create the list of investment components and go on from there. You will see then that if you don't know the field very well, it will basically be impossible. It will be impossible to do all these things correctly, and more importantly, to implement them in the right way. Well, that just to give you an idea of how the people choose their fields of activity. Do you need a break? Do we go on? How do you usually do this?
It depends on the group usually. I'm okay to proceed, so whatever you guys decide, I'm okay with that.
Then I would suggest we proceed, and if at some point obviously you need to do something different, you can do it. Just let me know. I don't want to speak by myself. But in any case, I was saying that statistically speaking, probably more than 90% of us dream about starting a business. Also, statistically speaking, it seems that the majority of us never cross that line, never do get the point of starting a business. So, what are the reasons for it? We have reasons for starting a business, as you have seen, and of course, as you know, you already have your own reasons. What could be the reasons of not doing it? Obviously, there could be many reasons to be found. In many cases, we have tried to find those barriers, especially to be able to find solutions to help people. This is again one example of statistics. Finally. And here you can see that this group, the main barrier in the path of them starting a business was the lack of capital. I also want to point out that in this stage, when they already have a business idea, in this stage, almost no one sees the market as a barrier, as a problem. I will come back to this idea hopefully in 2 weeks when we are going to talk about the market. Right now, I want to point out that these statistics didn't really change through time. This was done, I believe, in maybe 2018 or so. But I have another one here done in 2010. I've done such surveys for many years. And always, you can see it here as well. I hope you can see it. It's written in a smaller font. Always, the main barrier seen by people is the lack of capital. So basically, it's like as them saying, we have a great business idea, we have everything. It's the capital that we are lacking. If we would have the money, we would do wonders. Unfortunately for us, we are underprivileged. We don't have the money as others do. Because again, we would do miracles if we would. Here also, if you can see, the lack of a market is seen only by 5.5% as a problem. Because again, usually most of them at this stage see the market as favoring them. What I find interesting is the fact that this doesn't really change, because through time, the access to capital has changed. I remember I was working in this field before 2007, so before Romania entering the European Union. At that time, and especially before maybe 2005, 2004, the business environment was not that friendly. And for sure, the access to capital was difficult. There were some financial subsidies, European funds, that were being given for the companies to prepare for the entrance in the European Union, which of course took place in 2007. But they were very low, and the contribution of the company was of 50% of more, even more than 50%. You could try to access bank loans. The interest rates for sure were high back then. Then from 2007, as we entered the European Union, there were more programs with European subsidies. The ratios of financing were higher. In 2010, we even had programs that financed 100% of the eligible costs of investments. Access to bank loans was easier. But of course, at the end of 2008, the financial crisis started to affect the Romanian economy as well. From my experience, at that time, I was working a lot I was in financing investments also through bank loans. And in my opinions, the banks only reacted by restricting access to bank loans after 2010. So well inside the crisis. But in particular in 2012 and in 2013, the access to capital became very hard. The banks got to the point where they restricted a lot the access to bank loans. In 2014-13, there were almost no programs with public funding. And I remember that the Ministry of Public Finances, they created a program through which they were planning to finance small companies. They had funds for about 650 companies, and the desperation work was so great that I remember that about 25,000 companies applied for obtaining subsidies, again under those circumstances where the funding was only enough for about 650 companies. Again, from 2014, we started having access to European funds. In particular, 2016, 17, 18, there were a lot of programs with subsidies, in particular for small companies and for startups. But the view of the entrepreneurs did not change. they, throughout all this period, they kept seeing the lack of capital as the main barrier in starting a business or even in developing a business. So for a long time, I thought they might not have known about all the programs and the opportunities, but at some point I got to the conclusion that it was not entirely about that. I got to the conclusion that for some of them, for some of us, it's easier to say that we lack the money, the capital to do the investments and to start the businesses, than to admit that we have the same resources as all the others, but we don't have the courage to start the business, do the investment, and take all the risks that the chances, the risks that are involved by the new business. And the risks are indeed high, and there are reasons for such an approach, because as you might know, even in the more developed countries, even in the USA, which is always in front of the field, even if in the USA, about 50% of the startups close their activities in about 3 years' time from the beginning of their activity. So 50% of them close pretty quickly, fail. That is not to say that the rest of them, the other 50%, are highly successful. A lot of them close their activity later on. And even those that do go on for a longer period of time, it doesn't mean that they register extraordinary financial results. I mean, many of them still register losses, so they consume equity. And even those that do not register losses and do not consume equity, still the profits are very, very low, and they hardly justify the existence of the companies. The situation is not very different in Romania. In fact, on paper, I would say that we even look better. After 3 years, approximately 75 to almost 80% of the startups are still in existence. And even after 5, 6, or 7 years, more than half of them still exist. But that's maybe the problem, that many of them just exist, like the company of you, Mr. Fironda. There are so many of them that just exist on paper, but they don't have any activity. So in any case, my point is that the failure rate is very high. It depends on how we quantify it, but I would dare to say that, again, it's of about at least 70%. With the companies that close their activity, with the companies that do not, but don't have, from a certain point, don't have any more sales, with the companies that still go on, but they register losses, I would say that more than 70% of them would be in this position. And that's on the safe side. I mean, it's probably more than that. You know what I mean. Now, I want to show you some more recent statistics. But before that, I want to ask you, in your opinion, what's the average dimension size of a startup, a limited liability company? What are the indicators that measure the dimension of a company?
I'm thinking about number of people involved.
Of course.
Employees, but also associates. I'm thinking also about that as a metric. And yeah, we should. I'm a line manager. I'm always gonna refer to people more than other stuff. But of course, also budget overall and investment, and also outcome and visibility. I would think over a visibility of tops 3 years, for example, because usually things change. Startups need to work in a very extreme agile manner in order to be able to adapt to the market change.
You study a discipline this semester that's called, I believe, financing of the SMEs, the small and medium-sized companies. And with that, I'm sure that you must have started from the law, because there's a law that defines what a small or medium-sized company is. And the law classifies the company according to its size, taking into consideration, as you have well said, the number of the employees, but at the same time, the value of its yearly sales, let's say the turnover, and the value of its total assets. So these three indicators are, at least according to the law, in Romania and more or less throughout the world, those in use for determining the size of the company, or rather for classifying the companies according to their size. So I'm coming back to my question. From these 3 points of view, how do you see a startup? How many employees at the beginning, in the first year, the first month, maybe? How many employees? What would be an attainable level of the sales for the first year, and a reasonable value for the total assets, but mostly for the employees, because you will be put yourself in the position of structuring your personnel for your business idea. And we have to talk about it. With how many employees should we start our activity? Your opinions?
I would say somewhere from 5 to 10 maximum.
5 to 10, okay.
I've worked in startups with less, way less people. So my gut would say 3 to 5, but I'm thinking that maybe we can do more than that if we think a little bit bigger per components and dimensions, maybe an economical one, accounting one, and then the technical part, something like that.
Understand. Mr. Fironda, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I suppose
Your
it
opinion?
depends. It depends of the activity.
For sure.
When wants
For
to
sure.
do.
Just as an average. The way you see it doesn't have to be scientifically.
Yeah. My opinion is you can start a company, a small company with 2-3 people, and with a budget of starting from 10,000 euro.
Okay. I'm going to show you now the statistics, the recent ones.
And blow our minds.
I believe they are important if we are to configure an activity. First, the number of the companies. I have here database. I just got it in January, so it's data from the beginning of this year with all the companies. It's a very large Excel. I'm having a hard time opening it. I've opened it a few hours ago just to be sure that I will be able to open it. But I have analysis here. So again, at the beginning of 2024, more or less right now, there are in Romania, I will enlarge it a bit. About 1,350,000 limited liability companies, but a total of almost 1,900,000 enterprises of all these types. You can see them here in Romanian rather than listen to my translations in English. So this is the total. Apart from that, from these types of enterprises, we also have, as you can see here, about 116,000 associations and 21,000 foundations, NGOs. Okay, we said that we are interested in the commercial companies, most of them being, as it would have been expected, the limited liability companies. Now I have these statistics, which is from 2022. It's recent because for 2023, it's only now, as you probably know, that the companies prepare their financial statements. So I have here the data from all the financial statements of the companies, of the Romanian companies, but the most recent ones are those from 2022. The financial statements from 2023 are being elaborated, prepared right now. They will be, I would imagine, finished by the end of May. They will be sent to the Ministry of Public Finances and they will become public, I guess, from July. But as of now, the newest financial statements available are those from 2022. And looking within them, so the financial statements from of the commercial companies, of which, as you have seen, most are limited liability companies, 40% have 0 employees. Again, I'm not talking only about startups. So it's startups, but mostly existing companies. So from all the companies, 40% have no employee. Another 29% have 1 employee. Another 9% have 2 employees. So as a total, 79% of all the companies, commercial companies, have 0, 1, or 2 employees. 79%. That leaves 21% of the existing companies with 3 or more than 3 employees. So here I'm not only talking about startups, I'm talking about all the companies, including those that have a history, experience. So only less than 1 in 5, less than 20%, less than 1 in 5 has 3 employees or more. For the startups, and I have statistics for the startups as well. For the startups, approximately 5% have from the beginning 3 employees or more. 5%, that's 1 in 20. So 1 in 20 of the startups, I mean, has 3 employees or more. And of the same startups, 3.9% have 3 employees or more and at the same time manage positive results, so profits and not losses. So my point is that without any additional information, if I were just to guess, starting, if you were planning to start the business with, as you have said at the beginning, maybe 5 or 10 employees, you would be part of a very, but indeed very select group of companies, maybe less than 1%. Maybe in less than 1% start with 5 or 10 employees. And even of those, most of them have special conditions, as in the case where an entrepreneur already has a company of maybe 50, 60 employees, and for different reasons, he starts a new company in the same field. But he transfers employees from the existing company to a new company. So in most cases where a startup really employs from the beginning 5, 10 employees, there are such a type of this type of conditions in the background. So I brought it up. Why? Because once the operating activity begins, the company will have pressure on it to sell, to generate revenues, to reach the, let's say, monthly break-even point. The break-even point, you probably know what that means, is basically the point where the revenues reach the value of the charges, of the expenses, and the result from operations is null. That does not come simply from the beginning. What happens for most companies at the beginning? Most of them register fixed expenses. Do you know the difference between fixed and variable expenses? Because this difference is very important for a startup.
Yes, we know. We know.
You know it. Okay. So because unfortunately the fixed expenses do not depend on the volume of the sales, or rather on the activity volume in general, unfortunately, the companies at the beginning of their activity have here a great problem. If I were to show you planning, and I have many financial plannings for many startups done by the entrepreneurs, I can guarantee that none of them plans to not generate revenues from the beginning. All of them estimate that they would generate sales of 10,000 lei maybe in the first month, which increases to 20,000, 30,000. So already by the end of the first year, they plan to reach sales of maybe 70, 80,000 lei per month. If I show you the accounting data for the same companies from after they really start their operations, it's more like 0, 0, 0 for the first 3, 4, 5 months, maybe 1,000 lei, 0 again, 2,000 lei. And this is how the first year looks for most of them. So although we usually have such discussions, no one really believes that this could happen to him. Everyone plans of starting their activity quickly reaching the point of passing the break-even point, quickly reaching the break-even point. Unfortunately, from the beginning, there usually are fixed expenses. And for a startup, most of the times, the fixed expenses, the most important ones at least, consist of the wage expenses and the rent. In most cases, these are the most important fixed expenses. Please imagine also that in particular, when you do an important investment, because you have said before, well, 10 minutes ago, you said that you can see a startup starting its operating activity with low investments of maybe 2,000 euros. And I agree. But of course, many companies see this as a barrier. You have seen this also in my statistics. People feel that they need more capital to start. So please imagine that a higher investment done at the beginning probably involves higher fixed expenses once the operating activities commences. Because a larger investment probably involves larger space, so larger rent expenses. Probably involves more people to manage it, to manage the equipment, which obviously leads to higher wage expenses, which are almost always fixed as a behavior. For sure, it will involve higher depreciation expenses. But even if I'm not taking the depreciation expenses into consideration, as at least they do not involve payments, they are not monetary in nature. The other two, the rent and the wages, are the killers, are, as I said, the main expenses fixed in behavior that determine greatly the value of the break-even point. And this at the beginning when the company struggles into generating any kind of sales. So these fixed expenses, with them determining the break-even point, are great barriers for the companies at the beginning, for the startups. And if the startup employs from the beginning 5 people or 10 people, you can imagine that this will bring the fixed expenses up. Imagine working for 4, 5, 6 months, which happens to many startups, without generating sales, so revenues, but paying wages each month of whatever it may be. If you only have even 5 employees and you pay them the minimum wage of, what is it now, 3,300, of course in software development is much more, but let's say that you do pay the minimum wage of 3,300. It's 5 times that is what, 16,500, I believe so. So imagine that you only have to pay 16,000 lei each month after month, for maybe 6 months, plus the rent. And I assure that it will be others as well, but let's say it's only that. How many months can you sustain these expenses? So it will probably be the end of the company in most of the cases if it starts its activity with 5 employees. That was the point I wanted to make. I knew that you would have be inclined to imagine more complex structures with financial departments, marketing departments, technical departments, and so on. But please remember that realistically, this almost never happens. You have seen it in the statistics that I showed you. 1 in 20 startups has from the beginning 3 employees or more. 1 in 20. And as I have tried to argue, those that do usually have special conditions. So a startup never or almost never employs from the beginning 5 people, almost never. If it would do so, the consequence would be its activity probably stopping pretty quickly because of the high wage expenses that would not be covered by the revenues throughout the first months. Imagine now the entrepreneur that quits his job. So that also means that he doesn't have wage revenues anymore. He probably has a family himself. Now he doesn't bring income anymore in his family budget, but he has to pay for maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 months, maybe 20,000 lei each month in the company. So on one hand, his revenue is gone. He doesn't have the time to work anymore. He's getting involved 100% in the company only to give it a chance to work, because as you have seen, most of them do not get to survive. If you are to give it a chance to survive, not to fail, you probably need to quit your job, and in almost all cases, not always, but most of the times, to take care of the business. So you don't have your wages anymore, your own, but you have to cover the fixed expenses from what? Your family budget. You can imagine why pretty quickly you will lose heart, and this is what happens for many entrepreneurs, and find a way to shut down and go back to your old job. So I was expecting your impulse to think about many employees, but please try to limit the complexity of the activity and the number of employees. It is true, I said from the beginning that we need ideas that will involve from the beginning investments of 200, 250, maybe 300,000 euros. It is true. And of course, such an investment, not always, but in many cases could involve having maybe 2 employees, maybe 3 employees, but try to limit it. It would not be practical. Why is it that I gave you this benchmark of about 200,000 euros for the investment? I wanted it to be practical. On one hand, yes, I know you can start a business with 2,000 euros, but this discipline does not have as an objective only to teach you something about starting a business. The core of the discipline is related to investments. So, okay, you can imagine a business that doesn't mean does not need investments. Sorry. Great, but that's not an idea for our discipline. Here, the point is to have something, to have an idea which would allow us to practice and to learn how to manage the investment. So therefore, I need an investment that's complex enough so that we would have something to analyze. That's why I said at least 200,000 euros. In practice, if a company, let's say, plans an investment of 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, it usually makes no sense of doing a feasibility study for such an investment. Because if you were to pay an expert like you are going to be, if the company would think about paying you to do the feasibility study for its investment, you would probably charge it depends, 5,000 euros, 10,000, even more, depending on how many people you need to get involved. So it wouldn't make much sense of doing a feasibility study that is worth maybe 10,000 euros for an investment of 30 or 40,000 euros, a small investment. You would do a feasibility study for an investment that is at least 100,000, but honestly, I would go higher to, as I said, 200,000. Now, why not a million? in more rare cases, startups do investments of maybe €1 million, €2 million, but it happens rarely. I have worked at such investments, but of course, it will be hard on one hand to find the capital, the funding required to finance an investment of €1 million on one hand. On the other hand, imagine that such an investment will probably also involve many employees once you want to start the operating cycle. So high fixed operating charges. And as it will probably have a higher production involved, because you see the investments usually define the production capacities. It will probably involve a high production capacity, and for a startup, most of the times it will take a lot of time for it to reach to a high demand and therefore a higher level of the sales. An investment, however, of 200,000 up to 300,000 euros, I don't find it in practice impossible for a startup. An entrepreneur, maybe 2 or 3, that together may gather 30,000, 40,000 euros. They could quite easily get access to 200, now maybe up to 300,000 euros subsidies for investments, because there are, as I was saying, many programs in Romania that offer subsidies for investments. Usually banks avoid financing startups through bank loans, but a company, even a startup that receives subsidies might be looked upon differently even by a bank. So banks usually make an exception and finance startups when the startups also obtain subsidies, non-reimbursable funds through different programs. So my point is that it's not impossible. It's quite, I don't know if easy is the correct word, but it's reasonably doable. An investment of about 200,000 euros for an average person that only has maybe 10,000, 20,000, it's possible. So this is why I thought that an investment of about 200,000, 250,000 is suitable, is also realistical for a startup, even if you don't plan in reality to do these investments, or at least not right now. Okay, so this was my reasoning behind the limit of about 200,000, the benchmark. Okay, having said that, if you still have the energy and the patience, I was planning to show you some examples of businesses and of entrepreneurs that we have financed throughout the years. Is it okay with you? Do you still have the energy?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, I promise that I will just give you some examples and I will end it with that. So maybe...
Can I some questions or
Of course.
to make an observation? Yeah, the statistic you are referring to, they don't take in account the human capital. You know, the statistic is only from the accounting point of view. A company with no employees, but a company with no human capital actually cannot work if nobody's there to do something, you know. So
that is and isn't true. The companies that have 0 employees, in many of them, what happens is that the entrepreneur, which is an associate in the capital of the company. In many cases, he works from the position of an associate without being an employee. So that happens in many cases. So the company, of course, with no human labor cannot function, that's true. But in many cases, the entrepreneur works himself. He is at the same time an investor, he's the manager, and he's the employee, in many cases. In other cases, he outsources a part of the operations. So maybe he does some things himself, and other operations, he outsources them to other companies in the beginning. And maybe in time, he will reach the point of being able to internalize them, the operations. So there are many companies that have no employees, but that doesn't mean that some of them, indeed, some of them have no activity. It's true. Many of them, however, are active in these manners. Okay, you can say that there are also companies that might use work on the black market, but this happens less and less. So that's not the most important factor in it.
Yeah, no, I know that. So what I meant, it's actually you need at least one person that even if you buy services from other companies, there is need to one person to be there to buy these services, you know.
Of course.
Yeah, and this is not counted in in these statistics, you know. For example, in Austria, you cannot exclude this one person, you know. If you have a company, you need to pay taxes as you were an employee, you know, even if you're not an employee, you know. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
That's
so
what I mean. So from the point of view of human capital, I would say you cannot have a company that's it active and has zero human capital, you know. It
of
has no
course,
employees,
in
but
order for it to function, obviously, at least you need to work in it. And to you, of course, I'm not suggesting that you would not plan to have any employees, but I'm just trying to point out that you should probably restrict to 2-3 employees and not 5 or 10. That was my only point. So of course,
yeah,
not 0, but not 10.
understood. Yeah, the point. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. I'm going to show you some examples. Hopefully, I will inspire you. And I'll maybe stop the recording because I will give you real people, real businesses. So maybe we better not record it. Just 1 second.